In this video, we are going to see how to use cutters to create atmospheric paintings. We'll see how to create a palette and transform the tones of a painting to express emotions through a real sense of atmosphere. Let's do it. It all starts with an idea. I start my painting with a block-in to lay down my composition on the canvas, but I already have a plan for the cutters in my future painting. I didn't make a cutter study before because it's a cutter scheme that I've used a couple of times before, so I'm very familiar with the tones. But if it's not your case, obviously creating a cutter study can help, or even just mixing around and playing with cutters on your palette until you find something that clicks. Sometimes you can randomly find a cutter composition idea that evokes the desired mood or atmosphere just like that. It helps to know a little bit about the psychological effects of cutter as well. Each cutter has its own psychological effects, so it's important to understand the associations and emotions that each cutter can evoke, even though it's not, set in stone and it can be transgressed, but it's kind of interesting to know. For example, cool cutters like blue and green can create a sense of calm, while warm cutters like red and yellow can create more of a sense of energy and dynamism. So basically, blue is more like the spirit side and red is more like the power side. In a blue science setting like the one that I'm planning to paint, obviously the warmest thing is going to be the human character, the skin cutter. Even though it's still very dull, it's going to be the warmest thing that there is to look at in the painting, attracting the focus by default. This is why the human figure generally works very well over a very cool blue background, because it emphasizes the warmth of the subject. A cold background, by contrast, reinforces the humanity of the figure while creating some kind of distance between the world and the subject. On the other hand, a very warm background, like a red-orange background, is going to engulf the subject as if it's part of its surrounding. The warm figure in a warm background doesn't stand out as much, and it's a different kind of vibe, a different kind of effect, more of an effect of unity and cohesion. For your cutter composition, can also help to have a good color wheel. If you want to download mine, it's free and it's available on my website in the resources for artists section. If you want to go more in depth and if you want to create anything with cutter, from extremely accurate realism to completely invented cutters, you can also check out my cutter theory course. It's also linked in the description box. In our world, cutter is deeply linked to the time of the day and the weather. So don't just think about cutter and subject, think about the time of the day and the season, because it will change your cutter gamut quite drastically, and it will also help the viewer understand how they're supposed to feel. In this scene that I want to make, I want to create a perfectly cold, even freezing scene, so I'm going to add snow and frost effects. A lot of my cutter scheme is therefore going to revolve around white, which I plan to have echoed in the almost white blonde hair of the woman, as well as the white fur of the ermine, a pet ermine like in The Wonderful Lady with an Ermine by Da Vinci. Well, this is kind of sort of my version of it in a way. I start with a very cool background, an urban scene sort of, that I paint mostly with a deep blue cyan made out of phthalo green and phthalo blue and burnt umber to help it dry faster, and obviously lots of white. I even add touches of white for snowflakes. I'll refine everything later, but I start by blurring the first few touches while the background is still wet, and I'll obviously retouch the effect later. And you can see that I exaggerate the blue tones, somehow making aerial perspective come to the foreground. Normally subjects become more bluish in the distance, but it can mean that they need to be pushed pretty far away. in a realistic setting so that it becomes visible. I want to get the same bluish tones but closer to me. So I need to sort of exaggerate the colors, and as if the atmosphere is overflowing and the aerial perspective is everywhere, even in the foreground where it's not necessarily supposed to be. Now, as you can see, I start with the contexts, the background, the surrounding, and painting the background first will help me set the context of the composition. If your goal is to create a more atmospheric scene, it's much better to start with the background first, because it's where the atmosphere comes from and will help give unity to your painting. To break the monotony of the blue cyan, also obviously add a few touches of muted red and orange, muted red lights, orange lights in the background. I'll see how I break this monotony, but I will definitely use the effects of complementary pigments to bring balance and harmony in the composition. So now that I know what type of atmosphere I want to create, I need to adjust my palette to get the right gamut for the skin tones. And I'm going to use the skin tones as an example, but everything has to go through the same gamut shift. So as an example, for the colors that I want to mix, let's take this screen capture of Daenerys from Game of Thrones, for example, because my character will have similar hair color and similar skin complexion. And also, it's a very cold exterior scene with snow in the background. So I can use this type of color scheme as a reference point to imagine what I need for my painting. And for your own projects, you can consider the overall atmosphere you want to create and try to find references that can help you, and choose colors that will help you achieve that very atmosphere that you're looking for. It can be in movies, it can be in TV shows, in video games, in whatever. Just try to find a color set that works well, that fits the type of emotion that you want to convey. So right now I'm going to mix my flesh tones, but I need to adjust the gamut to make it match my very cold setting, the scene that I want to create. A gamut, to make it simple, is a section of the color space, like a cut in the color wheel that only includes a limited number of colors that can be mixed with a set selection of mixing primaries. In my case, the gamut pulls very strongly towards blue cyan. If you look at the color of Daenerys without the right context around it, you wouldn't really think that those are flesh tones. A very simple way to paint flesh tones like this is to use like sort of the same pigments as usual, but add an extra 25 to 30% cyan or blue to the mixtures. Normally, cyan or blue is an opposite to skin tones, so you wouldn't use them because they are neutralizers in this case. But in my case, what I want to do is pull the entire gamut towards the bluish, cyanish side, so it's exactly what I want. As a result of this addition of 25 to 30% blue, some colors will be muted, and most of the complementaries of the cyan and blue will drop in chroma drastically. That's expected, and that's exactly what's going to create the right atmosphere for me. Like all the red, all the orange side of the spectrum is going to be completely muted. Inversely, if you ever paint, for example, a very red-orange sunset, then the blue, the green of the leaves, and the cyan tones all around will be almost muted, almost invisible, very dark and muted. So it works both ways, obviously. It's just an effect of how complementary colors work. So once your palette is chosen and adjusted to get the right gamut, painting skin tones with very cool colors to create a cold atmosphere is, well, pretty simple. Most of the hard work actually was on the palette, but after that, it's pretty much painting as usual, except that it's a little bit distracting to deal with blue and cyan in skin tones, where it's normally more orange, yellow, and pink. Like, we're not painting avatar characters right here. We're supposed to paint a human. We're using so much blue. It's kind of It's kind of distracting. It's hard to get around this idea, but it will work eventually. So what I do is I start with the darkest dark as usual, and I try to focus on shapes and volumes. It's kind of strange, I have to admit, that we have all these very ghostly hues in the flesh tones, but if you already have the background painted like me, it makes much more sense. What I try to do is to concentrate on the cyan and blue tones in the area right before the shadow. This is typically the area within the entire gradient that will be the most chromatic. Usually this stripe of color would be more orange or more rose in a normal setting than the rest, but in this case, I want to make it more cyan and more blue and not rose or orange. The plan is to proceed with multiple layers, one cool bottom layer with mostly bluish, cyanish, greenish tones, almost like a grisaille, but even more complex and chromatic, not just black and white. Then when this is dry, balance and harmonize it with slightly warmer accents and build up the painting in complexity like this, adding touches of warm, touches of cool. It will bring this multi-layered transparency to the skin, really going to provide something realistic and very cool, very atmospheric. I'm using the second layer to create a sense of depth now in the painting. So what I want to do now is, I had my underpainting, which is very, very cool, very ghostly in terms of flesh tones, and now I'm going to bring a little bit more complexity, a little bit more variety, and touches of warmth here and there. And this can be achieved by using warmer colors here and there and using transparency to my advantage. This thin new layer of paint is supposed to vibrate with the cool underpainting and create, a lot of interesting nuances. I try to use color to create some sense of vibrancy in the painting. I focus on contrasting colors stacked on each other with very subtle strokes, almost like two strings vibrating at the same time on an instrument, but playing slightly different tones that vibrate in harmony. That's what I'm trying to do with warm and cool in this case. And the final thing that I do is I use accessories and contextual elements to reinforce this sense of cold, like, steam coming from the mouth, snow falling, just warm coats, warm clothing, everything that can indicate that it's actually cold outside. It's important to keep in mind that these are just some examples and techniques, and it's also important to experiment and find your own style. Not everything is going to work for you, but if you have fun and if you experiment, you'll definitely find what's the right way to proceed for your own paintings. Final thing, don't be afraid to use color as an expressive medium. If you have to choose between naturalistic, boring realism and strong emotional impact, always prefer the second. We paint and we look at paintings because we want to feel unique emotions, not just see random copies of photos. Colors have a language of their own, and paint specifically can convey feelings that no other medium is capable of. Cool colors such as blues and greens are often used to create a calm and serene, spiritual atmosphere in a painting. But you can also push this in another direction by using complementaries. Cool tones can be used to convey a sense of distance or detachment, to express specific emotions in a painting. Really, you have to try using different shades and tones and alternate, make it vibrate to create different types of moods depending on what you want. For example, a pale blue can convey a sense of tranquility, while something more deep, dark, like phthalo dark blue can convey a sense of sadness, mystery. But putting the two together can create something very unique that vibrates in a very unique way. Additionally, you can use cool colors in combination with warm colors to create contrast and add depth to the emotional impact of the painting. And there would be so much more to cover with cutter. It's a huge subject. If you want to watch my cutter theory video, simply click on the link that's going to appear somewhere. A huge thank you to all my Patreon members. This video wouldn't be possible without your support. If you want to join the community, you will find a link in the description below. You'll also find the links to both my courses, my oil painting course and my cutter course. All right, that's it for today. And as always, my friends, joy and inspiration to you. Bye.